Today's guest is a supporting sponsor of Liberty in Finance. Welcome back to Liberty in Finance. We're glad to have this returning guest. Dechev is the CEO of Mondoro Capital. She joined us shortly after the Rural Symposium on Natural Resource Investing last summer in Boca Raton, Florida. And now she's back to talk to us about an exciting press release that just came out today from their company, Mondoro. But Teo, welcome back to Liberty in Finance.
Thank you.
Before we get to your announcement today, I wanted to ask you a question that's been brewing on my mind since we last spoke about your company, because Mondoro is not just about gold, it's also about copper. And it's occurred to me since we've talked with so many analysts and market experts and banking experts talking about grave risks in the economy and the banking sector and inflation and so on, or people saying, no, we might actually get a recovery here. We may not be going into the world's longest recession or whatever. So it occurred to me that with a foot in the door of both copper and gold, Mondoro may be ideally positioned to benefit its investors no matter which way this goes. In other words, if things go spinning out of control financially in our world, it's good to have a line to gold, because gold has proven to be a stable and valuable asset in times of financial turmoil. On the other hand, if we see an economic rebound, or when we do, then copper typically responds with a growing economy, housing, etc. So am I right about that? And is Mondoro, in a sense, have that balanced positioning that people can take advantage of no matter which way the economy goes?
Yes, and that's primarily a reflection of the fact that the type of systems that we explore for, which are primarily the copper porphyries, do come with multiple commodities. And as a result, particularly in Eastern Europe, you do get porphyries that are very copper and gold rich. And so as a result, naturally, your deposits have exposure to both commodities. We really do focus much more on the base metal side and certainly on copper. But as you very well pointed out, there is that exposure through the assets to gold as well. I think from our point of view, yes, investors have exposure to both commodities, but also investors have a very unique opportunity to participate in what is traditionally perceived as a very high risk marketplace, which is the junior exploration industry. But in reality, you're participating through the generator model. And this particular model, what it does is it partners with major mining companies, which is what Mondoro focuses on. And as a result, the risk for the shareholder in Mondoro is reduced because the Mondoro is not going out on a regular basis and raising capital in order to drill test. And let me give you an example of that. So for example, in 2023, our budget for exploration by our partners is $9.7 million. That is 100% funded by the partners. And on top of the expenditures that they're putting in the ground to create value in these assets, they're also paying Mondoro fees to run the assets and annual property payments. So what it basically does is it gives a shareholder, imagine this, if I had to go out and raise $10 million today, that would be 50% dilution in the company. You as a shareholder do not have to experience dilution, which is really one of the fundamental reasons why the sector tends to be very high risk, is not only do you have a chance of failure in the drill bit, but then you have significant dilution in your equity. And so Mondoro really tries to give the best opportunities to shareholders by A, no dilution, partners fund, and Mondoro gets fees, and so we don't have to go out and raise capital. And you have exposure to two, I think, the most attractive commodities in certainly the long, let's call it the next decade of economic growth in the world.
And just today, we're recording this Monday, January 23rd, 2023. Just today, Mondoro put out a press release, and sounds like a significant business cooperative agreement. Could you tell us about why that's important to shareholders about this expansion of opportunities for Mondoro?
Yeah, I think it is important. So the BHP transaction, I think, is, first of all, a testament to the importance of the Western Tethyan to global copper exploration. I don't think that it is a mineral belt that is as well understood by the marketplace as, for example, North and South America. And I think that's primarily because there's not a lot of companies that are exploring there, number one. But number two, there isn't really, and that causes, less news flow. And really investors in North America don't get a chance to understand what the opportunities are. So A, it's a testament to the region. Second, the fact that they've partnered with Mandoro for exploration, I think, is a testament to the specific land packages that we have in the country. And that's in Serbia. And those are primarily in the eastern part of the country, which are the Timok region. And again, it's, I think, a really important opportunity to drill test what we think are exciting projects and prospects with, a whole new budget from a major miner that can bring also new geoscience to the local experience that we have in the region. So A, it'll give shareholders, again, more drilling in the company. B, it'll give the company more capital in order to not have to go back to the marketplace. And C, it recognizes the Timok region in Serbia as still one of those world-class opportunities for more copper discoveries.
For either from a map or a diagram or major concept bullet points for this, do you have a visual that you can offer that we can help connect this for our audience to understand?
Yes, I absolutely do. So what you'll see here is this is the Tethyan belt that runs really from Europe right into Southeast Asia. And here, really at the western end of the Tethyan belt is the location of Serbia. And there Mandoro has exploration programs with not only BHP, which was announced today, but also Vale, which we've been in partnership for the last few years. Recently, Kinross as of 2022, and of course, JOGMEC, who's been a partner in the region since 2016. And then when you look at North and South America, which is what we talked about, the majority of companies are really exploring along the North American Western front, the Cordillera here at the north end, and certainly going down into South America and what is well known as the Maricunga Belt. This particular region has a great deal of companies exploring, and so there's a lot of good news flow, and hence investors tend to hear more information about it. But the Western Tethyan hasn't had the same exploration exposure, and as a result, there's still significant opportunities.
As long as we have the map up, any concern that people, in prospective investors or current investors, might have about geopolitical strife in the general region, the larger region around that or to the north of that, is there any concern at this point on the part of Mandoro as far as increased risk to business continuity and so on in the area?
Yes, there is obviously the conflict continuing in the Ukraine. It definitely has caused, migration into both Eastern Europe, adjoining countries, as well as Western Europe. We don't see that as a effect spilling over into Europe, and certainly it hasn't caused that kind of concern. But obviously, if that conflict starts to expand out of the Ukraine and into more countries in Europe, that would be of significant concern. But certainly, I don't think anyone is thinking that's the future path of that conflict. Hopefully, it will be resolved soon.
Well, thank you for that. As they always say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So anyway, it's very helpful to have us oriented and to realize that Mandoro as a company, and you told us this before, has significant resources in the Americas as well as in Europe. So you've got geographic diversity as well. And so what do you think are the key takeaways if people want to understand one thing about this press release today? You were mentioning that this partnership with BHP is going to provide increased drilling, in other words, increased exploration without dilution of shareholders, and that's an injection of funds to do that. Are those the key points you want to make sure that people understand about your press release today?
I think, yes, that's a fundamental part of the business model, is to work with large companies like BHP, Vale, Kinross, and JOGMEC, to explore, where they 100% sole fund. But at the same time, Mandoro generates cash directly from those opportunities, from those options. and retains a future royalty, which on a BHP size or Vale size program could be worth $500 million. And we certainly saw similar examples of that with Reservoir Minerals, which was one of the other generators in the region. About 10 years ago, they made a discovery with Freeport called Chukotopeki. And what's interesting is that they were essentially, being diluted down to that royalty and ended up getting acquired by Nevsun for about 600 million Canadian dollars. And yet when they started as a company, they were trading around 30 million Canadian dollars. And so significant upside in this model, I think, for shareholders. I think that's often misunderstood about the generator. People assume that because you don't own the underlying asset, that somehow you can't create equity value in the shareholder base. But in reality, that's exactly the opposite. You hold none of the operational risk, which you would otherwise if you were a minority owner. You, as a minority owner, cannot make any decisions on the operatorship of that asset because that's held by the major partner. But you obviously have to, provide capital as a minor partner. So there are downsides to that structure. Whereas when you option out a project at 100% and you retain these royalties, you can create up to $500 million of value, but you have none of that operational risk, none of the financial risk to come up with more capital, and are really working with world-class leading partners who can run those assets extremely well. So my view is that the generator model, I think, can bring significant benefit to shareholders that are trying to get exposure to the opportunity with exploration, but don't want a lot of that downside that comes along with perhaps programs that don't succeed, because not every program does, or the dilution that comes along with junior equities. So I think it's a great opportunity for shareholders and new investors.
Speaking of opportunities, I just wanted to remind everyone that the reason that we even met was because you were attending as one of the few companies selected personally by Rick Rule and related to Sprott Asset Management's endorsement from an investment standpoint of your company. So really a young and up-and-coming company, but getting that spotlight as one of the companies that Rick Rule trusts and gave his endorsement of to be there at the Rule Investment Symposium on natural resource investing, and that's why we met. So just a reminder that this isn't coming out of left field. This is coming from a well-reviewed and vetted source, so we're glad for that. And we're going to put a link to your press release in the description of this video, so anybody who wants to find out all the details about this new deal that you inked with BHP can find it there. Any other further thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers before they go doing their diligence to see how they want to become investors in Manduro?
Yeah, I actually think another really important part of the district is the fact that just last week, very coincidentally, Dundee Precious Metals, which is a mid-tier operator, more focused on the gold space, who has the producing mine of Chelopech in neighboring Bulgaria and the producing Kumavgrad mine in neighboring Bulgaria, recently announced a new discovery in Timok, which is just about 10 kilometers northwest of our property package. And again, it's testament to the fact that this region, with good iterative exploration with the right teams that can, crack the, let's call it the DNA of exploration, can demonstrate that there are more world-class porphyries to discover. And what is traditionally being, kind of coined as a mature district is in fact still producing porphyries. And Dundee had been there in that particular land package, and obviously is still there, for 10 years. So this isn't an overnight discovery. This took 10 years of painstaking exploration. And that's the opportunity. And really the advantage, again, with Manduro is that as a shareholder, you're not paying for any of that cost. And I think that's pretty unique in the exploration space. If you want to be in let's call it commodity copper and gold exposure, but you don't necessarily want to participate through large cap equities because obviously there's a very different risk reward, but but you don't want, 100% of that risk through a traditional explorer model, then seriously consider the generator model and seriously consider Mondoro, because I think we provide the best of both worlds. And we provide you with upside, limited downside, and $10 million of expiration a year, which I think is pretty hard to beat.
Well, it's been a pleasure for us to find out about your company. We'd like to learn more. You keep mentioning the word generator. We'll have to come back and talk more about that specifically, because the project generator model and a royalty generator is something that people really need to understand better. I'll be the first one to learn more about it, and I think our viewers will benefit from that as well. And really appreciate it. We've been speaking with Theo Dechev. She is the CEO of Mondoro Capital. Theo, just as always, thank you for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.